On this episode of Locked On Lightning, the Bolts keep rolling. Is Vazzy officially back? We talk about what exactly that means. And the Lightning have a tough 9 games ahead to round out the season. All that coming up and more on Locked On Lightning.
You're Locked On Lightning, your daily podcast on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to another episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host, Adam Danker. Thank you for joining us here on Locked On Lightning. Just a reminder, today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Download the Sleeper app and use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL to get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. On this episode of Locked On Lightning, we're talking about the Lightning keep on rolling, winning one over the weekend against the Islanders. Possibly not looking likely now, but the Lightning are still rolling on all cylinders, looking like they're playoff ready. We also take a look at Andrei Vasilevskiy, how he has just really completely turned it on to a whole nother level, as well as we talk about the significance of the final 9 games of the season. But before we jump into any of those topics, we please remind you to go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube, so go ahead, subscribe to our channel there. Hit the notification button so as soon as the newest episode drops, you'll be notified. So the Lightning are continuing their winning ways, or at least for the time being until this Red Wings game ends, or if they could tie it up. The Red Wings actually just scored, made it 3-2 with about 2.5 minutes left in the third period as we were doing our cold open, unfortunately. This has been a phenomenal game, honestly, on both ends. The Lightning have really been really managing the storm, as well as the Red Wings have really been doing a good job of just taking their opportunities. But really, that's kind of what we've seen out of the Lightning over the last month, really, is that this team has just really gone from a team that really didn't know who it was. And we talked about it on the last episode, how this team really didn't have an identity. You know, they didn't know who they were really in terms of how they were going to approach situations, you know, how to manage games. You know, they were kind of, it almost looked like they were just making it up as they went along, while Nikita Kucherov was just trying to keep the team afloat, as he's done all season long. And then March hits and you start to see this team morph into what it is today, and that is really just a playoff-ready team. I mean, there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. This team is a playoff team in every sense of the word. Even in this game, you know, they've been going tit for tat in terms of even sequences with the Red Wings, even though it maybe hasn't equated to a lead tonight, as the Lightning just pulled Vasilevskiy with about 1:10 left. It's one of those things where win or lose, as long as they're playing games, and I said this last week on one of the episodes, how, you know, I'm not going to mind so much the Lightning losing games here and there, especially with the final 9 games coming up in the month of April. As long as they're competing, as long as they're playing games like what we see tonight, that's all that matters, because that is going to translate into the playoffs. And these, especially the kind of game that we're seeing against Detroit tonight, is the kind of game that you are going to expect to see in every single game of the playoffs. And it doesn't matter who you're playing, really, in the first round, or if the Lightning can continue their playoff run beyond the first round. But in order for them to do that, they're going to have to play games like the one tonight that we saw, as the Red Wings kind of put the last nail in the coffin there on the empty net goal, making it 4-2. But, you know, you can't help but be impressed by what the Lightning have done. Even tonight, I thought that the Lightning really were moving the puck very well. It's just one of those games where the opportunities fell in the lap of the Red Wings a lot better, or a lot more frequently. The Lightning had their opportunities here, a little bit of bad fortune here and there, but that's just the way sometimes the puck bounces your way on any given night. We've seen in recent weeks how well really the Lightning have had really good luck in certain situations. Everything's been coming together. Anthony Cirelli has looked phenomenal in recent games. Steven Stamkos is just the guy is just when you think he's starting to take a step back in a season, he's looking better and better and better. That game against the Islanders was a very good one as well. That was a game that I think we could all agree that really it was the Lightning's game to lose, and the Lightning in years past have really just mopped the floor with the Islanders, especially in the playoffs, if we're all familiar. And one of the really things that and if you're wondering if you're going to get a recap from this Red Wings game, no, I'm going to do that tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. But I'm talking about the Islanders. I'm talking about, just the Lightning really playing well over the last couple of games and how playoff ready they're looking. The thing that really jumped out to me from the Islanders game real quick was that, the Lightning had an issue, and that was just their lack of shots in periods, especially as the game went on. And I thought that really they addressed that very quickly, something that we haven't seen out of this team really in quite some time. And I'm talking about a couple of seasons here. The Lightning are one of those teams, as talented as they are, they take some time, whether it be the players themselves or maybe it's Cooper choosing to prioritize other things over other aspects of the game. The Lightning are not the best team when it comes down to fixing situations right away. And the fact that, it took them a couple of games, but in Tampa Bay Lightning time, usually it's a lot longer than that. Usually you'll see the Lightning not figure something out really for the entirety of a season. And for them to kind of come out of the gates there, which really was no surprise. Like I said, I mean, they play well against the Islanders all the time. 21 shots in the first period. As much as it was lopsided in that second period, I still thought that, there was never really a danger, especially going into that second period, and especially that it never equated to any goals. The Lightning were in complete control, and that's really something that I could say that we could kind of pick from almost every single game over this stretch. And even tonight, even though it resulted in a loss, you always felt, no matter how far the pendulum swung in favor or especially against the Tampa Bay Lightning, I thought I always felt, and I'm sure I'm not the only one here, you always feel like they're somehow going to pull this off. And that's something that I haven't felt all season. I'm sure I'm not the only one. Tonight especially, it was one of those things where that even when, the Red Wings just finished it off, the game is final now, you never felt like they were completely out of it, obviously until seconds left and you're down by 2. But second period, third period, even in that second period, back in the Islanders game over the weekend, Islanders come out, like I said, 15 shots to 8. As much as there was a barrage and there was momentum building for the other team, you never felt like there was ever going to be a loss of control over the game. And that's something that I think that we have not seen from this Lightning team really since the 21 season, when they won their second straight cup in a row. And that is really something that I think should really, really have a lot of Lightning fans excited going forward. Because that's not something that really goes away right away. That's something that, from firsthand experience, seeing that over the course of a season, I mean, you could, like I just referenced, the 21 season, that's something that you kind of hold on to for the entirety of the season. And that's something that I think that the Lightning know, that they're aware of, and that it is something that is really going to help them in their future matchups, especially the two coming up this month against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So let me know in the comments below, how are you feeling around the aura of this Tampa Bay Lightning team? Because it's a special time. Win or lose, 9 games left. Well, 8 now. 8 games left. I mean, it's a special time in Tampa Bay Lightning hockey. This team is playing as well as they have, I think, in 2 years. And the last time they played this well, they won a Stanley Cup. So let me know in the comments below how you feel about that. And coming up in just a little bit, we're going to talk about Andrei Vasilevskiy. Now, I'm talking vintage Vasilevskiy. I'm talking about Stanley Cup winning, Conn Smythe trophy winning Andrei Vasilevskiy. Is he back? We'll talk about that coming up in just a little bit. But first, we're going to talk about our first sponsors of tonight's show, and that is our friends over at the Sleeper app. Now, we are 8 games down, ladies and gentlemen, into the final stretch of the regular season. Playoffs are right around the corner, and the Lightning are looking phenomenal. Win or lose, I think they're playing great. Okay, and regardless of where they are in the current standings, I want to remind you that you can win big by playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our #1 choice for daily fantasy sports, and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you could win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick studs like Anthony Cirelli and Nick Paul to record more or less than their Sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus minuses, and more in a given game. So use the promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get up to $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. So as always, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel there. Comment below how you feeling about the Lightning right now. Like I said, win or lose, I think, and they're obviously not going to win out now, even after an impressive performance. I mean, they are going to lose probably 3 more games. That's just the nature of hockey. I mean, and most likely, which is just shows you how wacky of a sport it is, they're probably going to lose 1 or 2 of those games, or even 3 of those games, to teams that are not going to be in the playoffs. And that's just the way it goes. But the thing that we could talk about, the thing that we could look forward to, regardless if you like playing the Senators or the Blue Jackets or the Penguins even, the thing that we could look forward to, because there's been, I think, such a build-up to it now, has been the performance of Andrei Vasilevskiy. Okay, and even in tonight's game, I thought he was spectacular. I mean, just to put it in perspective, in the month of March, he is 8-1-1. His save percentage is .915. He has a goals against average of 2.39. He's having the best month of this season thus far. I mean, you look at any other month besides November, in which he only played 3 games. Obviously, that's when he came back. He has looked as good as he has all season long. And it's not just so much the numbers for me that have very much impressed me, because if you've been a listener for this show for quite some time, or if you haven't been a listener for quite some time, if this is maybe your first episode or the first you've just joined the show, I like to read both sides of it for players, regardless of position. And when the situation calls for it, I will dive into the numbers and take that into account. But I am a firm believer, as our returning listeners know, that the eye test never fails. It never does. I think oftentimes numbers are misleading, but and I've said that all season long for him. Even when his numbers have looked good, I have said that really when it comes down to it, he is not there. He has not been there yet to where the Lightning need him to be in order for them to be successful long term and for them to have a legitimate shot of getting back to somewhat of what they were a couple of years ago, or even get past a playoff round. And I am here tonight to tell you that I firmly believe that we finally may have Andrei Vasilevskiy back to where he was 2 years ago. If you all remember, And then even if you want to include the year 21, 22, where Lightning lost to the Avalanche, if you want to include that year, that's fine. I don't think, that version of Vasilevskiy is as good as obviously the two previous years. I think if we see that version against the Avs, the Lightning possibly could very well pull off a Stanley Cup win for a three-peat there. But I'm here to tell you that this is the best version I've seen of him since they won their second in a row. And it's just his confidence, his body language, the saves he is making. He made one tonight that was just so it gave me flashbacks to their back-to-back Stanley Cup wins. Just sticking that long pad out to make a save. I mean, that quickness, that agility, the instinct. We have not seen that really all year. We've seen, and even last year, we haven't really seen it. We didn't really see it that consistently. Here and there, we saw flashes. Here and there, we saw games where you almost wanted to say that maybe he was back, but obviously the big issue was always consistency. Even this year, he has looked pretty much average. And I think now, this month of March, especially, when things got started, when they had that stretch against, they played Boston, they played Colorado, they played the Rangers, they played the Flyers, they played Vegas. As you got into mid-March, and especially these late games of March, I think have really brought out the best in him. And some might say, well, it's because he got a late start on the season. I'm more inclined, and if you've been listening since the beginning of the year, I'm more inclined to believe it had something to do with that injury that he suffered over the summer. I firmly believe, and we may never get the truth about this. Yeah, I'm firmly in the realm of belief that it wasn't just fatigue that was bothering him last year because of the long playoff runs that he had for 3 consecutive seasons and all of that. I firmly believe there was something there, some sort of injury that was plaguing him all this time. And then whatever that injury may have been resulted in the injury that he sustained, or it got even worse. And that is what we saw from him. And that is why he got surgery and was out for the first couple of month and a half or so of the NHL season. So whatever you want to say about that, but that has really convinced me these last performances that this guy is back. And if that stays true, which I firmly believe it is, because like I said on Thursday's episode, is that the Lightning don't need Andrei Vasilevskiy to make highlight saves every single night like what we saw from him in 19, 20, 21. We don't really need that. All we need is him to go out there, make the regular everyday saves that an NHL goaltender should, and occasional on sequences when they need him to make the great saves, like the one we saw tonight that kept the game where it was, that really helped the Lightning continue to hold off the Red Wings. And unfortunately, as much as it sucks, didn't result in a win. But at the same time, I mean, some of the goals tonight that he led up, and even coming into this game, those were goals that, especially the first one from tonight, the Patrick Kane goal was just insane. But listen, I look at a lot of his goals that he's given up over the last couple of weeks, and I can't really sit here and bash him, when in reality I think he has done a lot to really help this team going forward. And it's not like he's carrying this team to wins. I don't think that's it. I think we have finally entered the phase of Lightning hockey, thankfully, where I feel like it's a mutual partnership now. Seasons past, we have seen Vasilevskiy more times than we could even count carry the Lightning and just keep them in the game until they figure it out to win the game. And this season, it's been different. The Lightning have had to learn how to carry him. Some nights it's worked, some nights it hasn't. And now we have finally gotten to the point, like I just said, where both parties are meeting in the middle to carry each other to the finish line and win hockey games. And a lot of it, even though it is, like I just said, a mutual partnership, a lot of it has to do with the fact that Andrei Vasilevskiy, vintage Andrei Vasilevskiy, is back. So let me know in the comments below. Do you still need to see more out of him? I was in the house. I was in the realm of saying that I did, and that was a couple of games ago. And the level he's playing at, it's very possible to carry this over. All he has to do is continue doing what he's doing and not have to worry about going out there and playing the hero. Are you in my ship saying that yes, he is back, or do you still need to see more, especially with Toronto coming up 2 more times? You got a couple other feisty teams coming up as well. So let me know in the comments below if you do. So coming up in just a little bit, we're going to talk about the magnitude of the final 9 games here as the regular season comes to a close for the Tampa Bay Lightning. But first, we'll talk about our last sponsor of today's show, and that is our friends over at FanDuel. Now, the sports calendar is loaded, and FanDuel's making it even more exciting to get in on the action, because right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you could use to bet the tourney, MLB, NBA, NHL, and so much more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So one last time, I want to thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. If you haven't already done so, please go ahead and subscribe to the podcast. Give us a follow wherever podcasts are distributed in audio form. We're also available on YouTube. Subscribe to our channel there. Hit that notification button so as soon as the newest episode drops, you are notified and you could listen to it. You could watch it. You could talk about it. You could comment below the video. Got a lot of cool stuff going on. And if you want to get in touch with us, go to our social media pages, LO_Lightning on Twitter, Lockdown_Lightning on Instagram. You could tweet to me at DankyDank, DENKYD8NK. You could DM me. You could your questions, comments, concerns, whatever about the Lightning, topics that you want me to talk about, questions, like I said, I will answer them all on the show. So go ahead and do that, especially as the Lightning are pretty much in the home stretch. It's pretty much the final countdown for the Tampa Bay Lightning here in the 23-24 season. Lightning just dropping this game tonight, 4-2 to the Red Wings. They get to bounce back right away on Wednesday with a game 1 of a doubleheader or back-to-back, whatever you want to call it. In Canada, they play the Maple Leafs. They play the Canadiens the night after on Thursday. They get the Penguins on Saturday, 1 o'clock. And then really, you may look at the schedule and think it's easy pickings after that, but I think it's the reverse. And we saw it tonight. Red Wings, even though, yes, they are a wild card team. They are a team fighting for a wild card spot. On paper, the Lightning still should beat these guys. On paper, the Lightning should beat Columbus and Montreal and Ottawa and Washington and Buffalo. I guarantee you, even though the Lightning are playing Toronto twice, I think those will be the easiest games they will play all month. And it's not that I'm downplaying the Maple Leafs and where they are at this point in the season. No, I think the Maple Leafs are kind of amped up now because the Lightning are breathing down their necks. They're only a handful of points outside of capturing that 3rd spot in the division from the Maple Leafs. The Lightning have 89. The Maple Leafs have 93, so 4 points. They both have the same amount of games as well. So, those 2 games, yes, will be very important, very intense for the Lightning when they play each other on Wednesday night and on the last game of the season. But at the same time, you have teams that, especially divisional teams, that are going to look to play spoiler. They're going to, I don't think it's going to get to a point where the Lightning are going to miss the playoffs completely. But, these teams that are not making the playoffs, Columbus, Ottawa, Montreal, Buffalo, those teams are going to go out there and play their butts off. I've said it so many times over the past couple of years, even when the Lightning were winning cups, the lower tier teams, the teams that really on paper have no business being on the same ice as the Lightning, they go out there, and I feel like those are the tougher teams, and that's why it's all that much more frustrating when the Lightning lose those games, as we've seen even tonight. I mean, that is a game as impressive as both sides played. You still want to win that game. You still almost need to win that game, especially after you're coming off a win against the Islanders, in which really you dominated that entire game. And that's, that's the thing about this. The Lightning are playing so well where you almost look at the games against the teams that are not making the playoffs as must wins, where, like I said, if the Lightning win one of two of those matchups against Toronto, preferably, I might sound crazy for this, but I would like to see the Lightning win. If they're going to win one of those games, I'd rather see them win the one up in Toronto, because it's kind of, you never know if you're going to run into these guys and you could say, well, you know what? We beat you in your own building. That's something you could hang your hat on. But I also look at the games against Columbus, Pittsburgh, Ottawa. Those games are going to be very important, like I said, because they're going to come out swinging from the initial puck drop until the final buzzer, and all bets are off, because really those teams are tough teams, especially Ottawa. We know how tough Ottawa plays and how chippy those games could get. And those are almost warm-up games. And those are almost the games, in my opinion, that I feel like, if things don't go well, that could kind of take you out of your groove. And, we just got done talking about how the Lightning have finally gotten to their groove. They finally found their identity. And for them to potentially lose all of that because you have one bad game against a team that you're not going to see until next year, that's inexcusable, and that's almost a scary thought to really bring up. So these final 8 games are going to be really, really telling of where the Lightning are going to be heading going into the playoffs. Like I said, even though I think that they are going to stay on the current trajectory that they are on right now, like I started off the show saying, hockey is a weird sport. All it takes is maybe one bad bounce, one bad play, one bad sequence, one bad game to really just completely change the outlook of your season, and vice versa. As we know, that win back in the early parts of March against Boston really is the reason why the Lightning are where they are now. So it really is just, it's going to be an up and down emotional battle for the Lightning going to the finish line of the NHL season. So let me know, what game are you looking forward to most as the Lightning look to close out their season? We'll be back tomorrow to recap the Red Wings game. We'll take a look at the Toronto game. We'll talk about Anthony Cirelli, because he has really been playing his butt off. I know we talked about him probably a couple of weeks ago or so, but I mean, his performance tonight was phenomenal. And he really should have had a hat trick. So we'll talk about that on tomorrow's show. So in the meantime, that's been it for this episode of Locked On Lightning, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Adam Danker. I'll talk to you in the next one.